Hey y'all, my name is Cassie and I am the creator of Pieces of Scrap, and in today's video we are going to be doing another free Amigurumi review video. And just to get started, I wanted to kind of refresh everybody about how I review patterns. I have three criteria about how I determine my rating for each pattern. The first is if I would ever use the pattern again. I like my patterns to be quick and easy for market prep purposes, and so I would want to be able to come back to the pattern and understand it easily and be able to use it again. Number two kind of ties into the first one a little bit. Can I understand the pattern easily? If it's confusing, hard to read, or if there's mistakes in the pattern, I'm going to rate it lower than I would other patterns. Number three is if I like the finished product. Overall, if it's not cute in the end, I'm probably going to rate it lower. The first pattern that I reviewed is this Snoozing Goose that was made in collaboration with Crochet, Daria Handmade, and Cone Crochet. I just love the overall aesthetic of this little goose that's just snoozing, and whenever you set it down, its head just lays down like it's a tired little sleepy goose. It's so cute, in contrast with what geese usually are like, which are evil in person. But the pattern comes in three different colorways, so you can make the white goose, a flamingo, or a mallard, and of course you can make it in any color that you want, but I just made it in these three colorways so you guys can see the variety the pattern offers. Makes these cute little geese, and their body shape is completely adorable. The pattern is worked, you make the two wings first, and they are no-sew, so you work them directly into the body when you start crocheting the body. You crochet the body from the tail to the head, and the head is also no-sew. You do your color changes in the round. And then the legs are also no-sew. You just crochet them directly into the bottom of the body, which is awesome. So completely no-sew project, and it's really quick and easy. This pattern took me about an hour and 23 minutes to make. I did have some hiccups here and there where I was a little confused, which kind of contributes to why it's a slower pattern for me. I feel like the other two were quicker because I knew what I was doing then. I knew where I was going to get stuck, and I was able to kind of compensate for that. So the notes that I made about the pattern, first off, for the wings, when I first single crocheted them closed, because you don't sew them closed, you single crochet them closed on the last row. She says that you have 6 single crochet stitches across, but I only had 5. When I made the flamingo and the mallard, I was able to get 6 in there, so I think I was just missing a stitch on that first time around. So I'm going to disregard that note. I think I figured out what I was doing wrong there. But because of that 5 single crochet issue I was having, it kind of made it a little difficult to figure out what was going on in the row where you do single crochet them into the wing onto the body. I had like a couple extra stitches at the end where I shouldn't have, but when you counted them all up, I had the right amount of stitches. It was just weird. Something else I would note about this pattern is it tells you to start stuffing kind of late. If I were to stuff it without looking at the pattern, because I usually just kind of stuff as I go anyway, I would start stuffing before row 20, which is where like the neck starts getting really skinny. I would probably stuff around row 16, because then you have a lot more room to really stuff the tail fully, stuff the body so it's firm, and so on. That makes it a lot easier to stuff and get the shape right. The other thing I was kind of confused about, and I'm not sure if I got it correct at any point in time except maybe this first one, the head where the eyes are sewn on and where the beak is decreased is really specific, and it mentions a marker, and then later it says marker yarn several times, like you're supposed to mark where the middle of the head is somehow, but it doesn't tell you how to do that, so that was a little confusing. So for some of these little guys, when they are laid flat on my hand, the head looks a little sideways, but it's kind of forgivable because it looks like they're kind of just nodding off to the side, so I don't find a lot of issue with it. But whatever that marker yarn is trying to get you to do is probably trying to get you to make sure your head is the stitches that you place in the head are correct so that the head doesn't look like it's leaning off to the side. This could also be corrected if I just sewed the eyes on a little better. So right now this guy looks like he's nodding off to the side. I think it's a little worse on this guy. He looks like his head is completely turned off to the side. That being said, I really enjoyed this pattern. I think these sleeping geese are really cute. They're so perfect. And I think they're little cute snugglers for babies because you don't have any safety eyes in them. They're safe for babies. And I just love the pattern so much. I'm gonna rate it 4 stars out of 5. The next pattern that I tested was this Daisy Duck by Steph Crochets. And I wasn't a huge fan of this pattern, I'm gonna say right off the bat. First of all, there are so many pieces involved with this pattern. Every piece is a separate piece. Nothing is no-sew. This bottom body part is a big sphere. The top is a sphere, but it's like a flat sphere, as you can tell by the back. The feet were a little confusing. The little wings are a little confusing, but they're really small and you can hardly see them behind the petals. The beak is kind of confusing as well. And then all the petals are separate petals. I could not believe that they weren't just one piece that you just like sew on around the head. They're all separate petals. And when I sewed them on the head, I wasn't really paying attention to how I was sewing on, so I ended up having to make 2 more petals so that they would go completely around the head. It calls for 6 petals, so I had to make 8. So that was a big pain. I didn't do this pattern more than once because I didn't really feel like I needed to. I got the gist of what was happening. I feel like the pattern had good intentions in making something look really cute. The picture that she shows of her final product looks a little different than mine. I think the yarn that I'm using is pretty similar in weight, so I don't think that's the reason. But I think the instructions are the reason. For example, for like the eyes and the beak, it doesn't really tell you what part of the head you're sewing them onto. So I kind of had to just look at the photo and try to guess. So this is like the top of the round from where you start, which is not normally where you put the eyes, but hers looked like it was around that area, which was strange. And then where she tells you to sew on the beak, she says on round 1 or row 1 or something like that, between the eyes. And I was like, okay, this is not row 1, but it's between the eyes, so it must be the right spot. So yeah, that was a little weird too. It's pretty obvious that the pattern probably wasn't tested by people. She probably wrote it up and then posted it without really kind of testing it very much, but it's a cute pattern. It's not for me. I don't like it. There's a lot of notes in here that I could flesh out, but I don't feel like it's needed. My only thought for Steph Crochets is to maybe ask for people to test the pattern a little and try to maybe rework it if you can, because this could be a very cute pattern if it was just reworked a little. A lot of patterns nowadays can kind of teach you how to make this shape, this body shape, without sewing 2 different parts to each other to make a body and a head. You can very easily kind of make that peanut shape that you're going for here in a no-sew pattern. And these petals could easily be a really long chain that you just make each petal onto. I think that could be done in some way, shape, or form. And then you wouldn't have to make each petal individually and sew them on either. As for the wings, the feet, and the beak, I don't think there was a way that you could really work around that without doing like bobble stitches. So there's that. But there's 3 pieces that shouldn't have had to be so much work in this, so that is kind of why I'm going to rate it kind of lowly. This pattern took me 1 hour and 46 minutes to make, which kind of shows you why I'm a little frustrated about it. All the sewing involved, all the navigating this pattern that was involved to try to figure out how to make it work. So that is why I'm going to rate it 2 stars. The next pattern I reviewed is this Carrot Baby by Nash the Yarn. This pattern comes with a colorway to make it a radish instead of a carrot, but I decided to do the carrot instead of the radish. The carrot wears these cute little overalls that are detachable. They're not part of the body. This pattern took me an hour and 30 minutes to make. I completely adore what it looks like. At first I didn't really like how the overalls come up so short, but I think it's really cute. It really accentuates the tall torso of the carrot. The body, head, arms, and legs are all one piece. These arms are just made off of the body into a front loop or back loop, I can't remember, and then you crochet into the opposite one on the next row to kind of close up that little space that you made. So that is awesome that you don't have to sew on any arms. The only thing that you really have to sew on are these little head leaves, which is fine. I just wish there was some way you can avoid doing that, but I don't really foresee a way that you could. They're kind of a really unique shape, each of them. These two use the same pattern, and then this one is a different pattern. So they're not identical leaves, but these two are identical leaves. So that makes it a little bit easier and a little bit faster. I love how this little carrot guy comes out. He's adorable. I'm sure he'll be a very good seller at markets. So I'll probably make up quite a few more of these guys in different color overalls and stuff like that. I think they'll sell very well. So I'm gonna give this pattern 4 stars out of 5. Next up, we have the Flower Buddies pattern by Celestial CB Crochet. This is a kind of cute pattern that is reminiscent of the Chunky Crochet Mushroom Boys. I think it looks really similar to them, except there's just some petals coming off of the flowers. That being said, the pattern isn't exactly the same, so it's not a copy. Although it looks eerily similar to the Chunky Mushroom Boy pattern, the bobble stitches for the feet are actually placed on the first decrease row, and there are overall less body rows than the Chunky Mushroom pattern. And then let's see about the rest of the pattern. There's 2 different petal variations. As you can see, there's this kind of cool sunflower layered looking petal pattern. These actually aren't layered. They're on the same row, all of these petals. They just kind of start to overlap like that because there's so many of them. It's really cool. So he's got like this kind of really cool, almost like straw hat looking kind of texture, but he's like a layered little sunflower, which is really cool. Really like how he turned out. And then this one is more of like your typical flower. So that's really cute. You've got 2 options there, and they're both detailed very easily. The only hiccup I had was with this one. I ended up with 2 extra petals than it says that there are in the pattern, which, I mean, you can't really tell that there's 2 extra petals. There's none like really squished together or anything like that, so I must have just messed up somewhere. Either way, it's not obvious, so I have no issue with that. And then the other thing that was kind of a hiccup here is she tells you to place the eyes in between rows 7 and 8, I think, but that would be too high. When I looked at the picture, it wasn't 7 and 8 that she placed them on. This is actually between 8 and 9, so that's where I placed mine, and that's where they're placed in her photo as well. So that must have just been a typo there. They're between rows 8 and 9 is where you should place your eyes for them to be in the right spot. So overall, I really liked the pattern. It took me 30 minutes to make. The longer petal one takes a little bit longer, probably adds about 10 minutes or so. So 40 minutes for this guy and 30 minutes for this guy. But overall, like the pattern. It's really reminiscent of the Chunky Mushroom Boy, but I really like the pattern. It's unique in its own way, and I would rate it 4 stars out of 5. The next pattern I tested was the Mini Otter by Lulu Grace Makes, and I really like this pattern. I made so many of these little otter guys. They work up so freaking quickly. It's insane. They take 27 minutes, probably less now that I know the pattern very well. They are very low sew. They work up from the top of the head to the tail. All of that is no sew, the legs and arms included. You just have to make these quick little ears, and it's just a magic circle with a single crochet, half double crochet, and a single crochet again. And you don't slip stitch into the first stitch, so you have that flat edge on one side. And then you just sew them to the head. And it makes this cute little otter with this little tail. He's adorable. I made him in this Bernat velvet yarn to make him look kind of sleek and like he's been swimming. They're completely adorable. I love this pattern so much. I think they're going to be a great seller at my markets. And it literally takes 2 2 minutes or less to sew on these little ears, so it's not even a hassle to sew these on. I love the pattern, works up so quickly. I would give it 5 stars. And last but not least, we have the Flower Guy by Amigurumi. I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, I'll put your name on screen though. This pattern took me 1 hour and 4 minutes to make. I was kind of disappointed in the fact that the body and the head are not one piece. I was expecting them to be, but they weren't. Something that kind of tripped me up about that was because she doesn't tell you to like sew this hole closed once you're finished with that. So I thought maybe we would be working on it later, but you don't. Once you start the body, you do like most body patterns with legs, you make one leg and then you make the other leg, I think it's 1 chain and then attach it to the other leg, and then you go up, you work up from there. So I was hoping that somehow you would work down from the head with that open space there, but you don't. You just have to sew it closed at some point and attach it to the body. There's not really instructions on where you're supposed to attach the head to the body, so I think hers looks a little different than mine does. Her head looks like it overlaps like the torso a little bit more, which I think is a little bit cuter than how I did it, but if I was to attach it to the torso a little bit more, I feel like his head would just kind of stick out too far, which is, I don't know if I would want it to stick out that far. But I really like how he looks. I think I sewed on the arms a little wonky. One of them's kind of like up in the air like this, and the other one's like that. So he's doing some like Y pose or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of silly. It's not meant to be like that. They're supposed to be sewn on the same way. But it looks like he's kind of doing a pose, so that's kind of cute. Completely unintentional, but it's cute. The petals are no-sew. You fasten on your petal color onto the yellow part of the row, which is weird because you don't leave like front loop stitches open or back loop stitches open to kind of secure onto. You just crochet into the stitches themselves, which is a different technique. I've never seen anybody do that before, but it worked. If it was my pattern, I would have done the front loop or back loop thing just to alleviate any issues you might have with that, trying to figure out where you're supposed to place your hook or anything like that. And then I think that would also make it a little easier, I would think. And then the other thing that was weird about the petals was, so you single crochet around the top, so then you have like this little line of orange around your head, your flower head, and then you cut off the yarn, tuck that yarn in, and then you're supposed to attach where you want your petals to start. And there's 2 options. So you can either have your petal centered at the top of the head, or you can have it off center like this, so then the next petal would be like starting here. So your petals would kind of be like bunny ears at the top and then go around, obviously. So that's why you fasten off and then reattach somewhere where you want your petals to start, which is just, I thought it was so weird, because you could just slip stitch to where you want them to start. That's what I would do if I had written the pattern. I would tell you to slip stitch. Or another solution to that thing was that instead of telling them to make it in the center of the head like it does in the instructions, I just tell them to start it wherever you want your petals to start. So if you want them centered here, you'd start it here, and if you didn't, you would start it wherever you're supposed to start it for that one. That way you wouldn't have to fasten off and then reattach for some reason. I just think that would save you some time and some wasted effort there. So overall, I like the pattern. He's pretty cute. He takes a little longer than I think he should, considering all the attaching and reattaching and the sewing involved. So that being said, I'd give him a 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that wraps up today's free Amigurumi review video. Comment below what your favorite pattern out of these guys is, and let me know if you've tried any of these. I'd like to know your thoughts about any of these patterns behind me. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!